So today I want to talk a little bit about how we help providers fix streaming issues and other connectivity issues that really only surface in front of users and that maybe not visible on the network layer. So this is all about uncovering these network problems from QoE measurements. So there's a duality here that I want to talk about, which is that delivery is often expressed in terms of QoS, quality of service. But what's really happening for users, we call that QoE, so the quality of experience. So the actual frustration you experience when the football stream is lagging, that's a QoE problem. It's, of course, also some QoS problem, but the question is, which one? Because the thing that you're noticing is not jitter. You're not thinking about packet loss when you're watching football. You are thinking about video startup times. You're thinking about latency, stalling, buffering, any kind of video quality issues. So the question that we want to answer is, how do we bridge this gap between the very traditional network level metrics and the things that the users are actually experiencing when they're in front of their screen? So how well do customers experience all these different services, and how can we put that into a number? We want to, ideally, we would like to ask every single user about their experience, but we can't. So what we do instead is we automate that process. We can provide a rating that tells you how well a customer would have liked their streaming experience for all these kinds of services. And by that, you can obviously improve the quality of your service if you're a network provider, but you have to measure it first. And to really explain why that is important to measure, I want to focus on, well, the benefits first, and then also the technical aspects. So first of all, why we do this? Well, you want to prevent churn. Obviously, any customers who is frustrated by streaming problems, they are going to blame the internet service provider. We did some studies on this service ourselves, but there are other surveys out there that tell you that the majority of users will blame their ISP for streaming issues, but the ISP may not be at fault. So the question is, how do you even find out what the problem is? And obviously, by reducing these problems, you reduce the customer churn. Secondly, you can make smarter investments. Networks are quite over-provisioned in some areas, and they are still under-provisioned in others. So you should better invest the money in these areas where it needs improvement and where you can have measurable gains in terms of customer experience. Thirdly, accountability. So, with all this blame shifting going around, it's good when network providers have data to go to content providers and explain to them, where there's a problem here, we measured it, here's how you can improve it, rather than just being vague about some service issues that customers have raised. And lastly, it's a competitive edge, right? So there are sometimes benchmarks comparing different internet providers in terms of who's the best for streaming, who's the best for gaming. Obviously, you have to measure that somehow. You cannot just infer that from the bandwidth that a provider promises. And why are QoS and QoE linked, and why is that complicated? Well, first of all, traditional SLAs, like I just mentioned, are expressed in terms of QoS. So you have bandwidth and maybe latency promises, but that's not enough to actually tell you how well a streaming service runs. For example, is my network fast enough for 4K video? It really depends on the service that you're trying to watch, because all of them will use different bit rates. Also, some providers optimize one KPI versus the other. I take YouTube or Netflix as an example. When you watch YouTube, it's heavily optimized towards starting a video very quickly, whereas Netflix is optimized towards delivering a smoother streaming experience with fewer rebufferings. So they're not the same. So your network in one condition will work differently for YouTube and for Netflix. So QoE is not a linear function of QoS. There's another interesting study we did where we measured video startup time as a function of download speed. And you would imagine that it's like a straight line, but it's not, meaning that if download speed suffers, the initial loading delay goes up even more extremely. And that is even more frustrating for end users. So that's why it's so important to measure these things on a user level. how do we actually measure these things? Well, we have SurfMeter, our application, which measures applications just like the customers use them. So measuring real services in terms of QoE and not making assumptions. So for example, YouTube and Netflix, I mentioned them. It could be any streaming service that we measure. And then we have probes that automatically stream from these services, whether the video is buffering or not. I mean, it's buffering here, as you can see. And then we collect the data centrally and can provide analytics in terms of quality. And what is quality? Well, we have the mean opinion score, which is an industry standardized metric that tells you on a scale from 1 to 5 how the customer would have rated their experience if you had asked them. But the good thing is you don't have to ask them. It's an algorithm that does it automatically based on the data that we capture. And now I want to give you a few detailed case studies that show how network performance and video QoE are related and what we could discover using this kind of solution. So the first one is a quick introduction on how CDNs actually deliver video. So if you imagine you're a video provider, you have your video available on an origin server, and then you can use multiple CDNs to distribute that video to an ISP. Now the question is, when the user requests a video, which is the most optimal path? And it's either one of those. But how does the video provider select that optimal path? And ideally, they would use QoE metrics to do that, and not just latency, because each of these CDN servers may behave differently. So how do you measure that? You need to really test the whole solution end to end to understand what the customer will be getting in the end. So does the CDN impact performance? Yes, indeed. So many streaming providers today use different CDN providers or different CDN hosts to deliver the video. And it's not automatically the case that each of them works the same way. I mean, all CDNs are connected with the ISPs through peering links, and they have good capacity, but it doesn't mean that each of them works perfectly. So for example, we measured a streaming provider who uses different CDNs for their streaming. And in terms of mean opinion score, so the quality score, you can see that one of the CDNs performs way worse than the other. So it's going to an area where customers would definitely be frustrated. And this can be automatically measured. So now we did this for an internet provider, this measurement. And now the internet provider could go to the streaming provider and say, look, our customers, they have problems when you stream using that CDN. So please, figure out your issue with the CDN before our customers complain to the ISP. And so the opportunity here is that as a network provider, you can detect application issues that affect the user experience, and you can link them with network level properties. So as an ISP, you can immediately react and help troubleshoot these problems. The second example is Netflix. Netflix can use different CDN servers to stream their videos to you as a customer. And as an ISP, you can, but you don't necessarily have to use caches from Netflix on your own network. And depending on whether you do that or not, you can directly impact customer experience. So here you can see on the x-axis how long it takes for the video request, the first video request to be made. And on the y-axis, you can see how long the video startup time lasts. And there's a direct correlation here, meaning that longer server connection times automatically result in longer video startup times. And these are startup times that customers would definitely notice. So after a couple of seconds, you're really frustrated. So the opportunity here, well, obviously you can't control how Netflix delivers the video, but you can control whether you put a caching server on your network or not. And by doing so, you can improve the performance measurably for your customers. And then another thing is temporal visibility. So when you do these measurements, again and again, like our probes, they measure every video service multiple times per hour. you can detect issues that only surface from time to time. So for example, here is a TikTok stream that suddenly is not very snappy. You know, when you browse TikTok, you expect the videos to load very fast, but at this point in time, there was apparently a network problem and the video took forever to load. And then there are other services like YouTube, which is the solid red line, which are rock solid. So YouTube is a good example of a heavily optimized service that even with network problems behaves really well. And there's a third service here where the line goes like this. And that means that, you know, every evening when people start streaming more, this service becomes worse. And that's definitely an area where also as a network provider, you probably want to talk to that content provider and say like, look, we can definitely prove that your service has streaming issues that occur every night, so maybe you should invest in more capacity because our customers are going to notice that. So the opportunity here is that you can detect when issues occur before your customers complain. Because if there's a huge problem, you will see that in automatic monitoring, and you can already start diagnosing the problem before you collect customer calls and then, you know, have network engineers figure out the problem and reproduce it. You will already have the data before. And finally, you know, there's a lot of Wi-Fi here. There's something that we wanted to investigate with regard to the local Wi-Fi. So, you know, some of these Wi-Fi solutions, they offer power-saving modes. And in principle, it sounds good, right? You save some power, you save the planet, and it shouldn't really affect the performance. So we tested what would happen if you enable an ultra power-saving mode on one of our Wi-Fi routers. And it turns out the bandwidth of that router dropped by half. We measured that using the same solution. And also, the jitter goes up by 10 times, which is really bad. And then finally, the ping also increases from 7 to 50 milliseconds. And now, it doesn't really make it obvious from the user interface, but I wouldn't have expected that as an end user. I would have thought, yeah, okay, power saving sounds nice. Let's enable that. And these are the network metrics. But for an end user, that doesn't mean anything. So the question is, what does it mean to stream a video when you enable ultra power saving mode? And it turns out, yes, it does impact the quality a lot. So you can see that the initial loading time goes up twice. So meaning you wait twice as long for your videos to start just because you have the power saving mode on. And the same can be seen in the mean opinion score. So it really drops a lot whenever the power saving mode is activated. So for an equipment manufacturer, it's also important to consider these types of metrics because it's really hard to go from ping times or download throughput to something that can be expressed in terms of customer experience when you don't measure it that way. So by wrapping up, I want to say that it's really important to not just guess QoE, but to actually measure it from the different services that your customers may be using. Because when doing so, you can uncover problems that may not even be visible on the network side and that only occur when you really start measuring like a real customer would. And by that, you can improve the networks. And I want to quote like a network engineer that we talked to recently, and he went to us and said like, it's amazing to see these metrics because now I finally have something I can optimize for. And previously they were in the dark about how their network was behaving, and they were mostly relying on customer complaints to go ahead and improve their networks. So if you want to learn more about how we do this and how we implement it, you can visit our booth or our pod, which is right over there in the back. We're happy to tell you more about how we can do this and where we implement this. Thank you.